That's creepy. Wow. Internet is awful. Yeah, right. We have a customer service survey. So that's
Sorry, what service? The government. The IRS is customer service. Is it another fax number?
They put it out a new website.
we literally got a letter with another survey saying we sent you a survey. If you didn't complete it,
Yeah.
It's voluntary, by the way.
Welcome to the government.
Can you fill out this survey about why you didn't fill out the previous survey?
Right. Yeah.
In case you lost the last one, we'll send you another one.
Your tax dollars hard at work.
I once got a letter from the IRS saying you had a mistake on your taxes. You owe us $0.00.
Good. Good.
That's the best mistake. Yeah, that's the mistake. You owe nothing. It was that mistake.
All right. So we're gonna get started. We got someone monitoring chat.
Yeah, I'm monitoring chat.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Awesome. So welcome y'all to our meeting this week. It's Hack UCF. If you haven't gotten a chance to sign in, please go ahead and grab the QR code, sign in. You don't need to do this unless you eventually want to run for some kind of executive office and or ever vote. If you don't want to do those things, don't bother. If you do want to do those things, go ahead and sign in. I'll give y'all a couple of minutes to grab that just in case. All right, so for today's topics, we've got announcements. We're going to go over the previous week's cyber challenge solution. We've got current events with Caleb F. We got Where Are They Now featuring Jonathan Haas. Tool time, we're going to go over Binary Ninja Cloud with me. Very, very introductory level, but fun nonetheless. Our main event today is Adversary Simulation and Emulations, Living Off the Environment with Raul. will be coming up on stage, which is awesome. Then we'll wrap up and go over a few things. So announcements. We've got the National Cyber League opening this coming weekend. Registration is getting ready to close, I believe, on today at midnight. So if you have not signed up or registered and you want to, you're running out of time to do that. You should definitely get a chance to do that. We've got the Ncaa C2 Games. Does anybody in Jeffrey or Matt, do y'all want to speak about this briefly? Jeffrey says he can. Okay. They can unmute, yeah. Jeffrey should be able to.
Yes, I can.
All right, awesome. Go ahead, Jeff. We can hear you.
So we have a slide for the C2 games, by the way.
Okay, cool. We'll just talk about it when we get to that then.
Yeah.
All right. So once again, hitting the National Cyber League. Preseason starts on the 11th, which is in a couple of days, Monday. Runs through the week. That's the preseason. The individual game will start not this coming weekend, but the weekend following that. And team game to follow in November. The gymnasium is open until December 17th. So even if you don't intend to compete and you just want to check it out, you can access all the challenges. You can learn a whole lot. There's a lot of modules in there to parse through. And we're going to end up doing a workshop about specifically NCL to cover what you need to know and how you can learn more if you want to. So lots of fun. If you are planning on signing up, grab the QR code up there. It should give you a redirect to our coach, Tom Nedros. And if you don't get a coach assigned to you when you register through the link, just hit me up in Discord and I'll walk you through the process. It was kind of confusing for me as well. So we got the Ncaa C2 Games. Jeffrey, did you want to talk about this or should I handle it?
Sure thing, I got it. So the Ncaa C2 Games is a new beginner-oriented cybersecurity competition. They stress a lot that you don't need much experience in order to compete, and that's kind of the whole point. It's more to act like a learning tool, sort of like how MCL is. It focuses more so on teamwork, building confidence, and just growing your general skill set. There are regional qualifiers, then regionals, then nationals. Most of the dates are tentative, but the regional qualifiers are going to be sometime this or next month, but exact dates are to be determined. It will be free to participate and it will be open to all students. So if you have no experience or you have some experience, like this might be a good opportunity for you. More details will be announced at a later date, but in the meantime, you can go to c2games.org for more information.
Awesome, thank you, Jeffrey. So yeah, that looks like it's gonna be a fun one. I've not done this before. And as far as I know, this is kind of a newer one. Tom, is that correct?
Brand new.
Brand new. Okay, awesome. So should be a lot of fun to check out. So upcoming and active competitions, we've got the CrowdStrike Cyber Challenge running from October 4th through the 15th. So that's ongoing right now. We've got High Storm on October 9th. So that's a team game. You had to register prior to. So good luck to all of our competing teams this weekend. Wish you the best. We've got the NSA Code Breakers Challenge, which is still ongoing, runs all the way through December 2021. So we talked about that quite a bit.
We are no longer in first place.
We are not.
No.
Are-
University of North Georgia is ahead of us.
Are we in second?
Yes.
Okay.
at the moment.
So you hear that? Like,
So it should be good.
well,
North Georgia has solved the entire thing. They just have like 200 students.
For us to all create accounts, we don't have any challenges.
absolutely, it is big push. Let's take the first. We've also got NCL. We talked about that a little bit on a previous slide. All right. So Matt, are you available to walk us through the cyber challenge solution from last week?
Yep. Hello? Can you?
Yep, we can hear you. Just go ahead and tell me next slide, and I'll walk through these.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this is the challenge from last week. So you can go to the next slide. And this is the decrypted
version of the text. Hacking things are super fun. So next slide. And so basically this challenge focused on the Hill Cipher, which is a polyalphabetic cipher, which basically means multiple letters for the same letter. And it's based on linear algebra. So it's not super complex, but it is some abstract math that you might have not been taught in high school. All the arithmetic is done under modulo, or mod 26 to be specific. And so there's specific properties of this Hill Cipher matrix. One of them, the most important, is the determinant must be co-prime with 26, i.e. the greatest common denominator of the determinant in 26 has to be 1, because if it isn't, there is no modulo inverse, and then you can't decrypt. And the matrix must also be at least size 2 by 2, because 1 by 1s are scalars. Next slide. So on the left, you see this is like an example of how you would encrypt using the Hill Cipher. You have a key matrix, 25, 22, 1, and 23, and the plain text is J and T. You convert the letters to their respective places in the alphabet, starting A equals 0 to Z equals 26. And then you do multiplying matrices like you would in the bottom right image. It's basically a dot product. So if you want to do the first value, so row 1, column 1, you would have to do the first row on the left matrix, and then the first column on the right matrix, and you just go like as it is in the bottom right, it just goes across the left and down, and then you would add them together, and then you would mod the result by 26, and you get your encrypted plain ciphertext. One thing to note is if you are multiplying by matrices, say it's n by n and n by m, you would result in a m by n matrix. The columns of the first and the rows of the second have to be the same, otherwise you can't multiply them. Next slide. So to decrypt it, you have to basically calculate the inverse of the matrix. On the left, this is the traditional sense of how you would do it in normal arithmetic. However, I wrote a little quick demonstration on the right on how you do it under mod 26. Basically, the first part is defining how the matrix is. And then the second line is saying that rather than multiplying by the inverse of the determinant, you're doing it under the mod inverse. Hence why they have to be co-prime. And then the matrix on the right is just the same as you would in normally. And then you also mod the whole result by 26. And that's your inverted matrix under mod 26. But yeah, in the next slide. So now that we've gone over a little the basics of linear algebra under modular arithmetic, you could program it. And I gave you a little segment of the code I wrote today to do it. And on the right, you see that 3, where it was question mark, it's a 7 and then 1310 with the plain text says hacking things are super fun. So this is a quick way of brute forcing Hill Cipher if you're given 3 positions in a matrix. That's all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. Great walkthrough. All right, so now we're on to current events.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So I'll be talking about the Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp outage and the Twitch breach and the misconfigured Apache Airflow platforms that threaten organizations and expose popular application credentials. So first thing to business is a Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp outage. So basically their infrastructure IPs were unreachable and their DNS names were not resolving. So Facebook disappeared from the internet. Facebook pushed a bad BGP, border gateway protocol configuration that caused them to stop broadcasting their routes to their servers. And I'll be talking a little bit more about BGP in the next slide. As a result of this, the outage lasted nearly 6 hours, preventing users from accessing these platforms and staff from accessing its internal network. So on Twitter, you can see Facebook workers called it a snow day. So In response, Mark Zuckerberg apologized to the 3.5 billion users that use Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And then, what is BGP? BGP stands for Border Gateway Protocol. It is the postal service of the internet. So it broadcasts routes everywhere. BGP essentially enables data routing on the internet. And here's a little diagram that you guys can see. Okay, moving on to the next one. The Twitch breach. So an anonymous hacker posted a 128 gig torrent link to 4chan on Wednesday. The leaked Twitch data includes the entirety of Twitch's source code, creator payout reports from 2019, mobile, desktop, and console Twitch client usernames, hashed passwords, every property that Twitch owns, including GameForge and some other ones, an unreleased Steam competitor, I think it was called Vapor or Valor, I'm not sure, Twitch, internal red teaming tools, and then here's a little picture that says Twitch confirming the breach. So what was the hacker's intention? The hacker's intention was to foster more disruption and competition in the online video streaming space because Twitch's community is a disgusting, toxic cesspool. That's what he said, so I didn't say that. Some speculate that this was in response to the hate raids that were often occurring on Twitch. So people were raiding women and people of color's channels and basically insulting them with hate speech, things like that. And so here we have the actual link. So that's really interesting. I thought it was really funny how he says, "We bring to you today an extremely poggers leak." And then if you just keep reading after everything he says, the Twitch SOC internal red teaming tools, he puts in parentheses LOL. So I thought that was really funny and I thought I'd include it. Okay, and moving on to the last one. Misconfigured Apache Airflow platforms. Apache Airflow is an open source tool to author, schedule, and monitor workflows. They had exposed user credentials for cloud hosting services, including PayPal, AWS, and Slack. These misconfigured Airflow instances expose sensitive information belonging to organizations across multiple industries. Yeah. So the security vendor Integer found that users could hard code credentials into Python scripts that would bypass this connections feature. This Airflow feature called connections led to the storing of passwords in plain text. Anybody can see them. And so in response, Apache Airflow launched version 2.0, and that fixed the issue. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Rough week out there for some people. All right, so now, awesome story, John. And I'm sure we could keep asking questions all night long, but I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and join us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. So this week we're doing tool time on Binary Ninja Cloud. I know that we've got a couple of RE challenges that have come up in the past, and I know that we've got some RE focused content coming in the future. So wanted to just kind of throw this out to everyone in case you aren't familiar with it at all, and you don't like really dig into installing a bunch of like random programs. This is something that you can use from your web browser. It's available to everyone and it is free. It does come with a couple caveats. Everything that you upload, you are essentially signing away to the company that they're able to browse and use. So, keep that in mind. We're gonna be going over something really dead simple because disassembly can get complicated fast, particularly when you're doing like lower level languages, even though C is pretty like high level language. And the more libraries that get included, even in something as simple as a hello world, it can spool out of control really quickly. So I think everyone should be able to understand what this does. I'll go over it real quick if you don't. It basically just prints to the screen, hello world. I'm going to exit out of here and I'm going to pull it up. So bear with me for a moment. I think this is the, yeah, okay. So binary.ninja. We're going to go to cloud. Going to, if you don't have an account, you'll have to register one. I do, because I'm a nerd. I think that's my password. Hey, there we go. Cool. So, all right. So when you first import, you're going to have to give it a few minutes because it's going to go ahead and like run through, decompile it, pick it apart, and get a good handle on like what exactly it is. And it's going to drop you right here into start. And what you're going to end up with is a bunch of assembly references. You can navigate over here on the side panel with underscore in it. And this is basically just kind of like the trying to not make this too complicated, like a initialization of the program, kind of like more or less an outline. You've got a call to, sorry, I didn't double click, my bad. So in it here is making a couple calls, and then you've got these different arrows that like move to different functions. So you've got a call here to gmon start, which pushes into this section of code, or you can move directly there. We've got a call in puts at one point to put a keyword sub. Just kind of scrolling through some of the stuff that's here so that everyone gets a good idea of what's going on here. And when we get to main, we're actually going to see something that's like a little bit more familiar. If you've ever kind of like taken a look at assembly, or you understand kind of like the general basics of like what it's doing here. We've got a string of characters here, which is just literally the hello world string that's that would be printed to the screen, and move and call operations. So once again, this is not an introductory to assembly. Like, we're not going to go too deep here, but this tool will let you pick through binaries and start understanding like how it is that they look. Now this is looking at it from the level of assembly. If we, or this is like the disassembly. If we go over here to strings, it's literally just going to drop out all of the strings that would be available. If you've ever done any kind of like malware analysis or basic reverse engineering, like running strings on a binary is pretty effective. It tells you like generally like what is contained in a human readable format. Over here in types, it breaks down different sections of the program for you, which is like, if you've used other programs, this is actually like really clean and nice. Here, we've got more of a linear disassembly. There are a couple of different methods to walk through a binary when you're trying to determine exactly what it is that it's doing. Linear disassembly is one path, but it is also able to be like fooled in a number of different ways for like obfuscation techniques. So being able to look at disassembly in more than just like one frame of reference is very helpful sometimes in teasing out exactly like what's going on. And then our last screen is triage. So a nice little essentially heat map of entropy here, headers, imports, exports, in general overview. Everything you're seeing here is like quite a lot to take in, especially if you haven't done RE in the past. But I promise you that this is a much like simpler view than if you were to like use IDA, or if you were to use even Ghidra, which can like we did a demonstration for Ghidra a couple of meetings ago, and it's a lot. This is simplified down as cleanly as you can possibly use it. I use Binary Ninja Cloud for essentially my entire malware analysis class. It's very, very useful. Like, it can do a lot of things and is pretty straightforward, and it's free. So if you have any questions, You can ask me all day long about this stuff afterward. But yeah, are there any questions real quick about anything I might have not covered? Yes. Yeah, it should be able to handle any binary that you can import in. This is just a Hello World program from I think like COP3, like Intro to C, like way back. Right, so this is not something that you would install. This is, you would use this directly from your browser. So if you've got Firefox or Chrome or Edge, basically any of the current gen browsers, you should be able to load this up and have zero issues running it. The nice thing too is that once you upload a binary, it's stored in your under your profile. So if you're working on this on like say for a school project on like computers here, and you don't have the opportunity to export that binary, or maybe you don't have the opportunity to import that binary because Windows Defender says that it's malicious and is throwing a fit, you can go ahead and get your binary up here through your personal computer and then use any computer to go ahead and disassemble it, which is kind of nice. So
Jeffrey asks, does it support decompilation into pseudo-C?
So I don't know that Cloud has that function yet. I do know that Binary Ninja, the full program, does, as well as a bunch of other like interpretations of languages. I know we haven't had them come down yet, but the group over at Binary Ninja has come to Hack UCF plenty of times. And the last time they were here, they were talking about being able to essentially decompile from a given binary into whatever high-level language you wanted to read it in. I don't own Binary Ninja because I don't have money for licenses, but if I did, this would be my first pick. What's up? Say what? So if you can't read assembly, well, you also have a low-level interpreted language, medium-level interpreted language, and a high-level interpreted language. So let's take a look at a high-level interpreted language. Thank you. So this would be what main looks like. So still some unfamiliar stuff if you, well, I mean, it depends on what generation of C you're writing in. But yeah, so main high level, we can show a medium level, and we can even show a low level. Yeah, what's up?
It's not 75% student discount. It brings right below $100. It's a really cool one for personal. Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's fantastic. So what did you say the price was?
$75. $75, $299 originally, $75.
Well, there you go. Take advantage of that. I know what I'll be getting for Christmas this year. Are there any other questions in the audience? Anyone on Zoom even? Okay, awesome. Thank you for your time. All right, and now I'd like to welcome to the stage Raul, who is going to walk us through some pretty amazing stuff with adversary simulation, emulations, and living off the environment. Let me show that I've got. Hold up. There we go. It's all you.
All right, guys. Some familiar faces. Obviously, a lot of new faces, and obviously, like due to COVID, not everyone here, but we can do this on Zoom as well. Everyone's adapting. Is it down?
You got another tab.
Yep. Perfect. And
All right.
it's a projector.
Yeah.
Present. Here we go. All right, guys. So we're going to be talking a little bit about adversary simulations. This is a new topic, I guess. In like we've seen like at DEF CON, like just this year they opened the adversary simulation village. So it's kind of like a topic within the red teaming realm. Red teaming has turned into like a really generalized term And so now services that are offered by like consultants doing red teaming, they're offering a lot of times now either adversary simulation or emulation. So who am I? I am a red team consultant at CrowdStrike, previous Hack UCF alumni. A couple of my hobbies, security research. I focus mainly like on initial access and also on malware development as well. I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the side just for fun. Offensive tooling internally. I don't really release too much out there just because I'm kind of lazy sometimes. And definitely like food, craft beers. If you tell me about a brewery, I'll probably go to it. And definitely memes and walking my dog around as well. I guess it might have screwed it up. Okay, so what is an adversary simulation? So first off, you have to understand what pen testing is in general, and really what pen testing is, well, actually, how many of you guys know what pen testing is in the crowd? Okay, so at least some of you guys have some sort of idea. Do you guys know the difference between what red teaming and pen testing is? If anyone can answer. Yep.
In some sort of context to like hardening against vulnerability.
Yeah, so sort of. So really like the main difference, the key difference you will notice between a red team and a pen test is really you're trying to, so a pen test, you're really looking just for vulnerabilities, whereas as a red teamer, you're basically trying to test the SOC and see what their response time is, how they address it, what if they're using their playbooks as well to address all the any alerts or events that may come in. So this is like what you're trying to test. Now, an adversary emulation compared to a simulation is an emulation you would essentially use threat intel reports and sort of follow the tactic, techniques, and procedures of a specific APT group. Whereas a simulation, you're sort of following along the lines of what a threat actor would do, but you're not exactly following those TTPs. So these are the main differences that you have to realize when you're talking about a simulation versus an emulation. So the question always comes is, what is EDR? So people, when they start getting into InfoSec, they will hear this like hot topic. What is it? Like they don't realize what EDR is, because obviously like we go into, for example, CPTC. We don't see really any EDR in CPTC, for example. You're just probably going against like what most likely Windows Defender, and it's maybe shut off. But when you go into a real corporate environment, you will be tested with EDR, especially on the red team. And this is something that has, within the last few years, has advanced so much. An EDR product it's just so advanced that it's really difficult to bypass it. And you may bypass it, but for example, you may bypass a userland hook. But for example, when you're trying to bypass the kernel, it's really difficult, especially if that EDR product does hook into the kernel as well. So this is definitely something difficult and something that as a red teamer, you have to adapt to basically your environment. So living off the environment. So I wanted to talk about this mainly focused on when we saw the whole SolarWinds hack happened last year. How many of you guys heard of that? Okay, so quite a few of you know what I'm talking about. But we'll talk about that in a second. But mainly what I want to focus on is using this MITRE technique that's T1213. And what it is you're essentially living off things in the environment. What do I mean by that? It's not really living off the land binaries like we've heard before. I think I gave a talk last year about this, but you're mainly living off the environment. So what I'm talking about is using SharePoint, using anything that is a low-hanging fruit inside an environment where you can leverage that to essentially not have to use malware or rely heavily on, for example, like Cobalt Strike or all these other tools that people release out there. Now, you have to start essentially thinking about what can you leverage in an environment that essentially is going to be obviously fair game, and as well as something that you're trying to simulate what an attacker would do or what they would like, basically you're trying to be an attacker. Like you have to think of in that mindset. And this is what I see is difficult to show in, for example, in a certification. I'm not saying I'm against certifications, but I'm saying it's like, well, they don't teach you that kind of stuff in a certification. Like if you look at OSCP, you're just learning classic AD, pen testing, you're learning as well as like, what is it, like Linux pen testing, and you're learning really outdated methods where if you look at a threat intel report these days, they're not doing that kind of stuff, especially at APT. I'm not going to talk about like an e-crime or ransomware group because they just use techniques that are super outdated. But anyways, so you have to sort of think in this like mindset, and what you start thinking about is like being able to leverage things in an environment, sort of like a CI/CD pipeline. I don't know if anyone does like DevOps here or is like has like a part-time job doing any dev work. Do you guys know what a CI/CD pipeline is? Okay, so it's just one person. So a CI/CD pipeline, really what it is, you're essentially, you have an environment where you can integrate code into like, for example, like Jenkins, right? Jenkins is a CI/CD pipeline or well, software. And so what you do is you integrate the code, and that code gets delivered or pushed out as an update to all your endpoints or whatever you control. So do you guys see where I'm sort of going here is, this is where what happens to SolarWinds. And I'll just show like there's a couple here. Jenkins is really known. Another one is Bamboo that I've seen. GitLab is another one that I've seen as well. But I just include a couple so you guys have an idea what to look for, especially when you guys, if you do want to go into like pen testing or red teaming, these are things that you should really look for. And where am I going with this? Well, we talked about the SolarWinds incident. SolarWinds hack was essentially a supply chain attack, and that's sort of what they did. They leveraged a CI/CD pipeline to integrate some code into a code base, and right when updates were pushed out, they basically compromised all these systems and companies. One being Mandiant. I was personally there the day that happened, and it was pretty tense. But anyways, going back to the slides here, what they essentially did was they actually pushed out some test code because they're aware that maybe they could get caught by some sort of EDR product, or maybe there's some telemetry on a network that may be logging specific things that they could catch them on. So they were really aware of this kind of stuff. This is where their like operational security and tradecraft came into play. So they pushed out some test code to see, let's see what happens. And they stayed dormant. You can tell here based off the timeline of events, they're basically there since 2019, right? And they essentially started to actually deploy the malware in 2020 of February. So we're starting to know like, okay, well, no one's detected them, like there hasn't been anything. And so we don't know how long they would have been undetected if it wasn't because they basically made one mistake. And do you guys know what that mistake was? Did you guys follow it closely? Do you guys remember? Okay, so basically what happened was during that event, what happened was there was a phone that was registered to Duo. So Duo is a 2FA application. And so that user had one phone get registered. And so the SOC noticed that, and it's immediately, obviously, like you see this in a SOC, and you're essentially going to start investigating because it's kind of weird, like a person registering another phone as well. So they called the person and they're like, hey, you registered a phone, is that you? And the guy was like, nope, that's not me. So that's where stuff started getting like picking up, and it just turned into like just a huge investigation. Like Microsoft was brought in, Fire at the time was investigating as well, and they had basically everyone just all hands on deck. Same with Microsoft, and they were just noticing and going through till immediately they found SolarWinds, which was the CI/CD pipeline I was talking about. They found basically some code embedded in a file that had like over 50,000 lines of code. So you can imagine them parsing through this, looking for some malicious code. So if we keep going, we talk about team communications chat. So why am I bringing this up? So this is something else that you could leverage. After the whole SolarWinds incident, I started sort of thinking like, what could I leverage in an environment that would give me an advantage over the blue team, or be able to at least evade them or figure out maybe what they may have around that network. So I started thinking and compiling like just ideas. And one of them was actually team communications chats. So like Slack, Zoom, Rocket Chat, Microsoft Teams, Mattermost, all these things are chats that are in a day-to-day basis inside a company. And I actually started thinking about this one was because I had a buddy of mine who was on an engagement where they were basically just using like it was like a Mac heavy environment. So there was no like Windows, no like Active Directory. It's like sort of like a Silicon Valley based company. And a lot of Silicon Valley companies are like sort of turning to this kind of stuff, especially like when they're DevOps heavy. So he was basically sitting in their Slack channels and just monitoring for anything. And a lot of times people will drop like links to like a Box instance or a Jira or a Confluence SharePoint. So like all this stuff is where you have to basically like you're performing basically reconnaissance in a whole different way to what you would normally see, where you're running a tool and you're sitting on your Cobalt Strike instance and you're running all these tools, and sometimes you don't end up getting anything. So you have to sort of start thinking outside the box like an attacker would. So Wikis, this is another one that you definitely must leverage. This is actually like one of my go-tos when I'm doing a red team or an adversary emulation or simulation, and even an internal pen test as well. Any of these, I will always look for a wiki or a SharePoint. I'll look for a Confluence, Gitbook, anything that I can get my hands on that has any documentation. You're gonna find a lot of juicy things on there. You'll find network diagrams. You'll find maybe, I don't know, like how they deploy their code. Just there's so many things inside a wiki that as an attacker you can leverage, especially if you have the right set of credentials. So any questions so far? And do I check on no one online, I'm guessing? Okay. So first war story. So I'm on an engagement. This was around like last December, January, around there. And so I'm doing like an internal pen test, and usually like internal pen tests, you can sort of just mess around. They usually like put you on there for like sort of like learning purposes to sort of learn how to put up infrastructure, how to set everything up. So you're not really hurried, right? So I'm on this engagement and I started thinking, I'm like, well, I can sort of start just sharpening my sword here and learning the trade craft and just applying it to see if they even detect it or not. So usually like when you deal with a client, you're dealing with like objectives. So that usually they'll ask you like, we'll ask them like, okay, what is your most crowned things inside your environment? And so this is a client that dealt with a lot of finance stuff. And one of their things was like, okay, we want you to decrypt credit card data, right? So that was one of their objectives. The other objectives was gaining domain admin on their environment. That's basically like the crown jewels of credentials inside an environment. And then the other one was accessing their like point of sales. So you're basically like these three objectives they're pretty difficult all in all, but they were achievable, right? So days start going by and we're just like not getting anything. We're just wondering like, all right, well, how the heck are we gonna get in now? Because this company, they would do pen tests with us all the time. So everything we would provide them, they'd patch it. So now there was like just really limited entries to get in. So we're in the engagement and days had gone by and we were just wondering, oh, well, what can we do? So I start looking for like anything with SharePoint, Confluence, and I end up landing on a Confluence wiki. And so we were trying, like we had already achieved domain admin, but we were trying to get into their, essentially into their point of sales area or like their network. And so I start looking And the reason that we couldn't get in was because there was 2FA enabled. So I started looking at their documentation and I noticed that one of their systems, one of their only jump boxes did not have 2FA enabled. So I basically leveraged that to get into the 2FA. We pulled like 2 config files that had basically 2 separate decryption keys, and we ended up decrypting like their actual credit card data. And it was difficult. It was like really stressful because like, okay, well, we have 2 objectives achieved. We have to achieve the 3rd one. And it was just like basically like a needle in a haystack. Like you're looking, like just parsing through systems, like thousands of systems. This is a huge company. And it just took days. Like we were basically going through data for days and days at a time. And then also like when you start working in companies and you start like dealing with databases, if you just screw up on a query, you'll be hours just sitting there waiting for that query to come back. So we had to be like real careful. But yeah, this is like a moment where I was able to leverage basically a wiki, and it made it that much easier to understand their environment. So another one is IT management software. So this is really interesting because a lot of times, for example, have you guys ever heard of Bloodhound, like the tool where you can run it through an environment? Well, a lot of times EDR detects this kind of stuff. So you're like any initial access you have, once that once that program is run, it immediately gets detected and you basically lost access to your system. So I started thinking, I was like, well, they must have some sort of asset management where I can leverage that and just be able to view and know where their systems are at. And this is where SolarWinds comes into play. And so I had a little bit of experience already with SolarWinds and like ServiceNow, thanks to actually like a free internship I did here as a IT help desk. And so I basically had like that experience and knew how to like work my way around SolarWinds. And so I would use that to essentially look for a system, check to see if it's alive, and then I would use my credentials that I had to access it. And so this makes it so difficult as a blue teamer, because now I'm blending into an environment where like there's nothing malicious going on. So how can I detect something that looks legitimate? And so you have to also know, like, if I have credentials that, for example, let's say John Smith logs into, I don't know, a workstation every day, right? And all of a sudden you see Billy Joe logging in at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and you're just like, okay, well, this is odd. Like this guy has never logged into here before. That's going to lead the SOC to immediately go in and investigate. So these are the things you have to note is like, yeah, you may have the credentials, but you also have to be aware of where these credentials are actually valid. And so you have to like sort of at some point in time, you're probably going to know the environment more than the actual like sysadmin or network admin. So ticketing systems. Ticketing systems is definitely something to leverage heavily as well. I basically would go into a ticketing system and just look at their tickets to see what activity may be going on. I remember at one point we were in an engagement and we had access to their ticketing system, and we would call them acting like we were IT because we had their tickets already. So we were basically like just social engineering them on the phone so that we could access this guy's workstation. The reason was because he just had such high privileges. We didn't have access to that guy's workstation, and he had access to basically like a cloud environment. So we had to leverage that to be able to access his environment. So another one that is huge is single sign-on. So single sign-on is basically like this graph shows, you log in, it's most likely tied to Active Directory. So you would log in and you basically have access to a bunch of other services, such as, I don't know, like ADP, Workday, like there's a bunch of stuff. Like once you like once you're like in a company, you'll most likely have some sort of Okta where you log in and you just have access to a bunch of other stuff. Is that me or?
No, I think, as if you check in the Zoom and make sure that no one's hot mic. What? No one's like got a mic turned on. No, that's outside. Awesome.
Okay.
There's only a few people that can, I turned off on meeting participants, so.
So another one is taking advantage of hypervisor like VM consoles. So I'm assuming some of you probably already have worked with like ESXi and vSphere, Hyper-V, all this stuff. So this is pretty common in environments where, for example, they'll have like one server with ESXi and they just basically set up like VLANs and set up a whole little mini environment. So the nice thing about taking advantage of these consoles is you actually have like remote access into these systems. And it's something that you can leverage as well. That's uncommon. I haven't really heard people leveraging this too much, but I actually leveraged it not too long ago. And we'll actually go into one of the second war story. So basically what happened was I was on engagement and they gave me basically 3 objectives. Was 1, to access their backups, 2, to essentially access their point of sales, and 3 was to obviously gain domain admin, right? So the first objective, I achieved the 2 objectives pretty quickly. And then the third one, I was left with point of sales. And they had like this really like difficult way to access their point of sales. And obviously that's understandable. Like this is where like credit card data is flowing. So they had it really segmented off. So I was like wondering, I was like, well, how the heck can I get into this environment? It's just really difficult. There was like a jump client that you had to go through, and then you had to have like some sort of token to like access that environment. So I started looking around and I would see a lot of like vSphere. And I was like, okay, well, I started looking in Bloodhound and I see that I have an account, like a service account that had access to vSphere. So I used that to log into one of the vSphere instances. And I noticed that all their systems had remote access to these point of sale systems just through vSphere. So they didn't properly set it up. Maybe there just may have been some sort of like, I guess it was just difficult. It looked like it was difficult for them to set it up properly. But yeah, like once we had access to one service account, it was just fair game from there. Like we accessed their whole point of sale system and started scraping cards out of like memory basically. So that was like another instance where you're basically leveraging stuff in the environment. And like I said, like I'm saying it again, is this is stuff that you have to take into consideration, especially nowadays. One thing is like people ask me is how are you like using your tools in an environment if everything's getting caught? Well, a lot of times nowadays we're doing basically what's called like, we set up a SOX proxy on a system. So we do have something that's basically relaying our traffic, but we're trying to avoid going directly from our what's called our implant or like our malware. So using a SOX proxy, it basically avoids you sending any traffic like out into their network, and they're not really able to detect much. Now there are like new products coming out, like XDR is like a huge one that's been coming out lately, and it's basically like EDR, but also for like network as well. So it's just like there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna have to adapt further on in the future. So another one that we tend to take advantage of is a lot of like the storage, like cloud storage file shares. So Box, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, all this stuff has a lot of juicy information as well. A lot of people will drop their documents in there. Even like, for example, I saw a case where HR had like everyone's like application with like PII data, social security numbers and everything. And it was just literally sitting in there inside a drive. And everyone in the company had access to it. So it just like goes time and time again. You just have to take advantage of a lot of resources within the network. And you have to, like I said, you have to just sort of think outside the box. Like this stuff is like, you would think of it as a normal user. And I started actually like thinking about this. I actually worked at TravelClick as an intern. And one time they asked me like, oh, we want you to do a AD assessment, but you have like no tools. And they had also CrowdStrike Falcon running. And so it was really difficult to do anything at the time. And it was just like, well, I have no tools. I have nothing that I can really do. Well, what can I do now? So I basically just started looking through shares, looking through drives, and you were basically just finding like low hanging fruit, just sitting up like you had credentials. Now I use these credentials, look legitimate, and you would really have no like repercussion from the SOC or anyone like detecting anything because you were just being as legitimate as possible. So this is one of my favorite ones is EDR consoles. So EDR nowadays it's so common, and a lot of times people actually don't know, but they have remote access to your systems. So for example, let's say someone's computer gets infected with malware, or let's say like there's a ransomware case that goes on and maybe like 3 or 4 computers are able to get ransomed and the other ones just, I don't know, they're not able to get to those, right? So as a SOC analyst, it makes it easy for you to be able to remote into systems and basically like pull files or maybe look at files on their system and stuff like that. And it's mainly used for the purpose of like IR or investigation. There's a free one out there as well that I've seen. It's called Velocidex by Velociraptor. And you can actually like, I don't know if you guys have ever worked with what's called Detection Lab. It's a project that's out there that you basically deploy a whole blue team environment where you can run stuff and detect it, sort of like play a SOC analyst if you want. So yeah, like this is stuff that you can definitely leverage in an environment. Is if I'm able to access an EDR product, now I have access to basically every system in their network, just because I have remote access on every system. So you can deploy malware if you want to, just using that. And even if like they have some sort of segmentation in place, you can take advantage of that too, because all these agents are like on their endpoints. And so if they're on an endpoint where you can't get to, you can basically use the EDR console to leverage that segmentation and drop malware inside one of their systems as well. So backup software. So I was mentioning a little bit ago where I had an engagement where they had backups, right? And so this is something else that you can also leverage. I haven't personally done this, but I heard a story of this guy that used to work with me where what he did was they were basically like sort of simulating ransomware. And what he did was he took advantage of the backups and he basically planted his malware in the backups. So now when they would revert back to whatever they were using, malware was basically deployed on the systems that he took advantage of. So this is another case where, for example, like we hear a lot of times when companies get ransomed, immediately like ransomware actors, they will go immediately for your backups because obviously like they know like, okay, well, if I ransom the company and I don't get their backups, they can just revert back to their normal state. And maybe like, I don't know, backups sometimes occur every 3 hours or every day. It just really depends on how much you can hold. And the new hot topic that we've seen lately is Mac environments. A lot of times you're turned to basically when it's a Mac heavy environment, you don't have Active Directory now. Like Active Directory is out of the game. And so now you're having to turn to stuff like Jamf. Jamf is like does anyone know what Jamf is? Okay, so 1 or 2 people, okay. So yeah, Jamf really what it is, it's basically like a tool where it's like an asset management tool, but mainly for Mac. And if you're obviously able to get access to the asset management tool, the Jamf tool, you basically like, it's like kind of like I would call it like a domain controller for Mac environments. You can basically access a lot of systems. You can deploy updates as well. So it is pretty common that people, when they do Mac red teams, they'll leverage Jamf, for example. Another one is like we mentioned before is Okta as well. Okta is something that is heavily leveraged in Mac environments. So it's something that people, when they do Mac red teams, they'll actually leverage as well. CI/CD pipelines. So knowing that you're in a heavy Mac environment, most likely it's DevOps. So this is probably going to be the most common one that you'll see is like some sort of CI/CD pipeline. I didn't include, well, actually did. So the other one is cloud environments. cloud environments are usually an objective as a red teamer that's going into a Mac environment to, let's say, grab like AWS keys, and you can log into their cloud, or grabbing some other set of keys and log into another service provider. So this is like something that you sort of have to, it's really new. So it's like something that is now being integrated into red teaming, and it's going to be something that's more common nowadays. And what's up?
There's a question in the chat from Amar. What was the name of that SOC simulator that you mentioned?
It is Detection Lab by Chris Long. And this is my contact info. If I usually don't respond too much through email, but I'm usually pretty active on Twitter. So if you guys want to talk on Twitter or ask a question, definitely feel free to reach out. As well as like we do have internships at CrowdStrike next summer. It is mainly focused on IR, but I know from a previous ACUCF alumni that was at CrowdStrike, he told me essentially like they were doing IR and red teaming as well. So there's some sort of rotation at some point. So you do get access to be able to do red teaming in a way. Besides that, I have nothing else. Any questions? Yep. They should be on the drive.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, on Google Drive.
Are they
Yeah.
good to public release?
Yeah, that should be fine. It shouldn't be an issue. I'll probably just, what I'll do is I'll give you like a PDF version, just because like it seemed like it screwed up all the slides. So yeah, but they should be online. What's up? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know about that.
Yeah, the Zoom recording will be posted as soon as we get a chance to re-encode it, scrub through it, edit it, and push it. Usually about a week.
Yep. Any other questions, guys?
I have a question for you.
Yep.
If you are going to apply for an internship at CrowdStrike, what kinds of things like help push a resume more to the top? Like what kinds of things are being looked for, and how does one get those things?
So me being a person that was in a similar situation is being able to show that you do like extracurricular activities like CCDC, CPTC, you're involved in like CTFs as well. That's usually a big plus as well. Even like if you're able to do some sort of certification, that's great too. That shows on the resume, especially from someone that's coming in from like an entry level. It's definitely shows on the resume, and it's that key difference that you can, for example, you're able to differentiate between the other applicants as well when you're applying to really any job in security, especially at that entry level as well. As an intern, I would definitely recommend reading up on blogs, being really active in like the InfoSec community, whether it's through Twitter or whether it's through blogs. That definitely helps a lot, and it shows a lot in resumes. That's something that definitely helped me get my first job. So like I briefly mentioned it, but I worked previously at Mandiant. Now I'm at CrowdStrike. And then even before that, I was working at TravelClick I worked for I think 10 or 11 months. And then before that, I was on Lockheed's red team as well. So there's just infinite possibilities, and you also have to just look. I remember when I was applying, I got rejected probably like 50 times. And then I got basically one opportunity. So yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Addison, is there anything in chat? Nope.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, glad to be back and being able to present for you guys.
Thank you, Raul.
Thank you.
Give me a minute to kind of swap this around a little bit. All right, so shameless plug, operations, come help run the club. If you like what you see up here and you want to help us put on more great content, we can always use an extra set of hands. You don't have to know everything. We will teach you. And if you do know something, we would love for you to teach us. All right, like to get our infra crew to kind of talk about this one a little bit. One of y'all want to come up, or welcome Ryan to the stage.
Volunteer. Yeah, so last week, as you know, we launched the beta to our infrastructure. As of last week, you were only able to access it via the Cyber Lab. Now we've got our VPN available, so you can access it from anywhere. You should be getting an email at some point in the next hour or so. About now.
Next hour, yeah.
I'm not wrong. With instructions on how to use the VPN. Essentially just install OpenVPN on your computer and then use the profile in the email and you're good to go.
So how do you know that you're gonna get an email?
You will get an email if you are a member of HackUCF, have paid dues and done all of the necessary forms on the HackUCF website at hackucf.com/org/join.
Being an official member and Net Connect is a good indication of that.
Yeah, if you're a member of the club and like connect and have paid the $10, you're most likely going to be fine.
And if you join right now, how do you get the email?
If you join right now, you'll get the email after you're approved in like connect and have paid dues and have been approved by the treasurer. Matt's not here, so
It automatically goes through?
it should, yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. Anyone else have questions? Awesome, thank you, Ryan. All right, so once again, more shameless plugs. Infra, do y'all have anything else to add? Are you looking for anyone still? Are you guys good and stocked on devs right now?
I mean, if anyone wants to come help out and do dev stuff, then more than welcome to.
So front end, back end, still looking for people?
Anything, front end, be JavaScript, TypeScript, back end, PowerShell. If anyone wants to come do like software, we've got Splunk up in our environment, and we'll learn how to do Splunk dashboards, IR, vulnerability scanning. We've got Nessus. If anyone wants to do security, we can support like 10 different job roles at this point.
So if you want a job in like cyber security in the future, this would be a great opportunity for you to kind of cut your teeth. The kind of stuff that we're like making available on the private cloud is fantastic for doing your own kinds of projects, but the infra team specifically is giving you access to a bunch of tools that you might go out and use like in an actual work environment. So if you are interested, if this is the kind of thing that you want to do, you should definitely hit them up in Discord at InfraDev, or obviously you saw Ryan get up here, you've seen Michael get up here a couple of times. Just come and talk to them and they'll sort you out.
There's a public channel called Infra in the Discord as well, and then infra@hackucf.org will email us or everyone's on Infra right now.
Web dev crew. I know I've got Jake in the back, and I've got Jeffrey in chat. Do y'all have anything to add, or are we kind of stable and good right now?
Yeah, we need help getting news. News page where we need articles and stuff on there. So want to help do some cool stuff like that. Yeah, that's what we do right now.
Awesome. So if anyone in the crowd or online is looking to learn some web dev stuff and wants to help grow the website, you can @ web dev in the Discord, or you can hit up Jeffrey or Jake in Discord as well, or in real life if you run into them. Shameless plug for design crew. That's my people, which means it's mostly just me. If you like artsy stuff and you like to make images and you like to like design things and you want to make like logos and things or t-shirts or merch or basically anything that looks good, please let me know that you're interested, because I'm always looking for people. We will be announcing a design contest here in the coming weeks for fall semester, and then that'll get pushed into at least one piece of merch for spring semester. So if you're interested in that, please come talk to me. Hit me up in Discord @ variable name. That's all I've got, I think. Yes, stay informed. If you're not on the mailing list, join the mailing list. If you haven't visited the shop, go buy merch. If you haven't joined the Discord, I don't know why, but there's a QR code. And if you want to find us on Twitter, you can find us on Twitter. Cool. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate you coming out. Y'all have a great day. If you want to hang out, we are going to meet up in the Cyber Lab after this. So I hope to see you there.